Hi friends, welcome back. So in this video, I'll be discussing about some of the interview questions related to test completion. So I'll be discussing around 8 to 9 interview questions related to software completion and how to answer about these interview questions. Also, I'm going to discuss in detail in this video. So let's proceed further. The first question is, what is all about test completion? What is all about test completion? The test completion is nothing but where we are going to check all the planned test activities have been successfully executed or not. That is the one validations we will do to decide whether test is completed or not. And whatever the goals we have set as a testing team and whatever the objective has been set, whether that has been achieved or not, is also we are going to decide to assess whether the testing which we plan is really completed or not. And the next question is, what are the key components of a test completion report? Especially as a test lead or a test manager, post completion of the testing, you should write a test closure report or a test completion report. So in that report, what all the different components should be there? That is a question here. First thing we should put here is summary of the testing activity performed. What are the various different testing activity we perform? That is the thing we should clearly call that out in a test closure report or a test completion report. And what are the test coverage we have achieved? What is planned and what is actually we have achieved is also we have to clearly define in this report, and we have to clearly call the test execution results as well. And different defect metrics also you should call that out in the test completion report. And any lesson learned based on the analysis, you should come up with the lesson learned activities as well, that will be useful for the future test releases. And any recommendation based on the lesson learned, do you want to recommend anything for the future as well, you should clearly call that out in the test completion report. So these are some of the aspects we should clearly call that out in the test completion report. And the next question is, how do you determine when the testing is complete? This is a very hard question. Normally they will be asking in any interview. Here, when we say testing is considered it is completed, the first thing what we have to clearly call that out is when all the test cases have been executed. That is a key aspect we should define. And all the defects which we raised is either in a resolved status or it should be in the mitigated or deferred status. And the test coverage goals also have been met. Like sometime we may define 95% test coverage should be there, or 98 or 90% test coverage should be there, and we should met that goal as well when we say testing is complete. And as we start the testing project, normally we define the acceptance criteria as well, especially if you are working in Agile. So we will be defining a acceptance criteria as well. And based on that acceptance criteria, have you really met that criteria? If you met that criteria, then we will say the testing is complete. Next interview question would be, what factors can influence the decision that to conclude the testing? So there are various factors really influence when we are making a call of deciding whether we have completed the testing or not. Is the first is the meeting the objectives and coverage criteria, and the second one is how much time we have and what kind of resources we have. That is also going to define what to define and when to close the testing as well, because time and efforts and resources are all limited in our testing projects. And even we have to validate all the severities of the defects, priorities of the defects. Based on that also we should be able to take a call. If it is having a higher severity defects, higher priority defects, then we cannot conclude the testing. And we should also take a feedback from the various stakeholders. It could be from the senior leadership team, development team, or even from the client, to assess whether we are concluding the testing or not. And we should also prepare that risk tolerance of the project, because when we say testing is concluded, we should assess the risk as well, whether we are going with a higher risk or a lower risk, or what kind of mitigation plan we have defined. That also we should define, so that these things will help us to make a right decision about concluding the testing project or completion of the testing project. And the next one is, what step will you take to ensure we are doing thorough testing for test completion? To ensure thorough test completion, you should follow a certain step. That is, you have to execute all the planned test cases. That is the number one. And the next one is, you should review all our test coverage, that ensure that all the critical functionalities are tested. And the next one is, you should also analyze whatever the test we executed. We have to analyze all the test results and defect metrics. And we should do a thorough regression testing as well, that ensure whatever we fixes that does not introduce any new defect. That is also we should validate it. And the next one is, we should obtain a stakeholder approval for overall test completion as well. These are some of the basic steps you should ensure that that guarantees that we have done a thorough analysis, thorough things in order to sign off the test completion. How do you handle the unresolved defects at that stage of test completion, especially if you have a minor or trivial defects which are unresolved? We should assess the severity as well as impact on the software. If it is really a critical defects, then we should work with the development to fix that as soon as possible. If it is a lower severity or lower priority defects, then you should take appropriate action in terms of deferring to the future releases with the right explanation and right recommendation as well. You should document it. And the next one is, what is important to document the test completion, especially whenever we completed the testing project, we will be writing the test closure report or test completion report. What is really important in this aspect? Basically, this document clearly gives the record of activity we have performed, and what are the different status we have communicated to the stakeholders with respect to the test metrics. Everything to the stakeholders is also going to be recorded in this document, and even our effectiveness also we can evaluate by bringing the right processes by looking on this test completion report. And as well as this document gives a reference as well for us in order to do any future testing efforts or audits. If you wanted to do, these documents really help us to do the right things in our projects. And what are some of the challenges you might be encounter during test completion? How do you address them? Especially some of the challenges we normally face is the time constraint. As we discussed earlier, resource constraint should be there all the time. It will be there all the time, because all the resources, either it could be people resources or hardware resources or software resources, which are more of a constraint with the time and resources as well. And there is always a conflicting priority will be there, that we have to work with the stakeholders, all the leadership team to make a conclusion about any priorities in that matter. And the challenges how we wanted to address is, as we discussed earlier, risk assessment we have to do for doing a prioritization testing activities. We should leverage test automation as well, especially for repetitive tasks. We should bring test automation, and we have to make an effective communication with the stakeholders, that they are managing their expectation and resolving the conflicts, so that we can come up with the right test completion.